Hey there, welcome to this tutorial. It's going to be another wonderful tutorial, and what we'll be looking at is how to create APIs using Django REST Framework. What we'll be looking at or what we'll be building out is REST APIs. Uh, uh, but for some of us that might be totally new, this is supposed to be a very beginner tutorial. And of course, for anyone who is advanced but want to brush up their skill, this is a very cool tutorial for you. We'll just be doing a quick refresher or a quick introduction to what REST APIs are. So I have this image here that I've created just to explain everything you need to know about REST API. So let me move this to the top. I think this should work here or here. Here is better. All right. So what are REST APIs? REST API generally, what is it? It's just a way of transferring resources or communicating between web services. So how your front end communicates to your back end, how you can pass data from the front end to the back end and back end to the front end. Basically, communication. That's what REST API is all about. Of course, there are many other ways this can be done, but we are using REST API. So what makes REST API different? We'll just focus on the REST API design. Of course, if you want a more in-depth stuff, you could read up more. So how does the design work? Now, it's just a basic way of retrieving, or would I say designing, how the URLs should work. So for example, when we do what we call a get or a post, now get, post, put, delete, these are all verbs, or a way that you are able to communicate with the backend. So for example, get is basically used to get details or retrieve details from the database. Post is used to post details or pass data to the database. Put is used to update a particular record in the database. And then delete, like it said, it's used to delete, destroy, or remove data from the database. Now, we have just two sort of URLs that you need to use. Now, whatever maybe your domain name is, it will be slash whatever noun, which has to be in plural form, whatever noun of things you're working on. So say, for example, we're working on students. So let's say we want to manage students. So we want to get all students, want to add a student, want to update a student, want to delete a student, want to get a particular student. Now, for us to get all students or to impute a student, that's create a student, you use the verb students. And then the endpoints you are supposed to call here, based on the API design, is get, which gets all the students, or post, which creates one student. Now, how about if you want to get one student, or you want to update one student, or you want to delete one student? Now, for that, we now come to this other side where we have student, which is the base URL kind of, then slash the ID or the identifier of that particular student. So for that particular student, say a student with an ID of 22, we would do get student slash 22 and you get one student. Then you could do update student 22 and then you update that particular student. Then finally you could do delete student slash that particular ID and then you are deleting that particular student. This is just what you really need to know about REST APIs. It's basically a way you transfer data front and back different web services, and this is how the design works. And I'll just demonstrate with an example here how all this comes together. And this is what we're going to be building actually by the end of this tutorial. So like we said, slash student. So we assume this of course running on a local server. This could be your live server too. It could be a development server, staging server, whatever. But the endpoint is what we are concerned about, student. So when you do slash student, you can do a get, or by default it has already gotten all the students you have in the database. So have these 3 students, so you could hit the get request if you want and it retrieves all for you. And then when we come down here, there is the button saying post. So you could decide to add a new student. So I could just add this student, add say very nice guy, very handsome guy, something like that. And then you do a post which adds the particular student with an ID of 9. So now if you want to get this particular student this time around, what you need to do is come up here and then student slash the ID, you put a 9, hit enter. You see it's retrieving that particular student for you. Now if you put a number that does not exist, you wouldn't get it. So for example, 2 should not exist. Okay, we have 2, so let's do a number that does not exist. Say for example 22. We don't have 22, and so it's telling us details. No student matches the given query. So this is how you get it. But let's use a student that we just added. That's number 9. hit enter, and it gets it for you. So by default, it does a get for you. So even if you click the get button, it just redo the same thing. Now, how about if you want to say, for example, edit this? So that's when the put comes in to play. So you do say Njoko, Samson Ebere, stuff like that, my name, and then just do a put, and notice that it updates here immediately. Don't worry, I'll show you how all these things work in a minute. And then you could do a delete. So once you hit a delete, ask you if you want to delete, and delete, and it's gone. So if you search for this again, you should get no student matches this given query as the result. So this is what REST APIs is all about, and that's what we want to build in this tutorial. So if you have followed up to this level, then that means you are ready for us to start building the REST API using Django. So I welcome you once again, and we want to get started. And here is our curriculum. If you have been following my tutorial up until now, from my previous tutorials, you notice that I've been using a curriculum for you to easily follow what we are doing here. So the first thing we want to do would be to install Python, which I have already done. Install Django, which I've already done. We did that in previous tutorials too. And most of these first steps, we've done it before, but just in case you are new, I'll just run you down through it immediately. We are starting a new project, and it's going to be really, really fun. So I'll just, of course, open my terminal. I've already navigated to desktop, so you could navigate to anywhere you want to be sure you have your project where you need it. So what's the next step? The next step would be to create a project in Django. Like I told you, I have already installed Django. So, but for you who might not have already installed, this is the command: Python pipe install Django, and all these are in the documentation. So let's close this off. All these are in the documentation here. Okay, great. Here in Django, so you could check it out. I have all this in my previous tutorial, so I won't be taking us aback anymore. So let's just hit the road like that, and then paste in Python, hit enter. Like I told you, I've already done the installation, so this is not going to have any effect. So the next thing I want to do at this point is to create a project. We are creating a student project. Basically, we want to be able to add students, remove students, and stuff like that. That's just it. So let's open this up and paste this and hit enter. So it starts a project, or creates a project for us called students. So I'll just navigate into the folder students like that, and open this in VS Code. That's just it. All right, great. Now I don't need to explain all this. Just in case any of this is new to you, just check out my previous tutorial. I have 2 tutorials behind this tutorial, or 3 of them behind this. You can just check it out, and you'll be able to follow through. Now let's go back to our curriculum. So we've been able to check out these 2 boxes. Next thing is to start the server. So let's get to it. So let's start our server immediately. So I'll just open my terminal. And why is it not opening? Great, it's open now. Hit it, and let's make sure we have started. So the pod is live. Oh yeah, I think I have another project open here, so let me just close it off. Okay, great, and then take it away like that. So let's do it again, and yeah, we are up and running. So once you hit it, you should have this landing page as soon as you navigate to the localhost 8000, and this shows that yeah, your installation works like you were told there. All right, next thing we want to do is to add the app we've just installed into our installed app. Right, so where are we? All right, we have not created an app. Sorry, I think I ticked this before we did it. So what we just did now is to start a server. So the next thing is to create the student app inside of our student project. So we're back here, and I'll just open a new terminal. Let me bring this down. Open a new terminal, and we want to start or create a new app which have been created for us now. So here is it. Great. And once we have this out of the way, the next step will be to add the student app to the settings here. So let's go to settings, and come down to the installed app, and just add the student app. So we'll just add it down here. Once again, all these have been done in a previous tutorial, and I'll make sure to add them in the description just in case you're finding it difficult to follow up what we're doing here. These are basics that we have already covered. All right, so now that we have this, we have created an app, we've added the app. The next important thing is to create a virtual environment. Now, it's very important that we create a virtual environment because we'll be installing applications or installing dependencies on this. So for you to do that, you do a Python 3 hyphen m venv and env. Once you have this, you hit enter, and this env folder has been added here, which means your virtual environment have been created. And then once you check that off, the next thing is to activate this. Now, each time you open your project, you need to activate this, just so you know. So paste this here, and good, we have activated it. And then how do you know you've activated it? You notice that you are now inside of your virtual environment in your terminal here. I'll just zoom in so that you see what I'm talking about. So initially, I had my MacBook name and straight up, but now we are starting with the environment env, which is a virtual environment, and so everything we'll be doing now will be working inside of the virtual environment. All right, that is it. So let me reduce this to a proper size. So now that we have this activated, we are now ready to start building out APIs. So for us to do this, we'll use the Django REST framework. This is a very powerful framework that powers everything that's all about creating APIs, authentication, permissions, and all of those good stuff. So in case you are coming from a different background, say Node.js, this will not be so difficult for you to follow. And so you need to navigate to Django REST Framework here at django-restframework.org. This is where everything happens. All right. Now, one thing I'll do for you is to do like a rundown for you on how the documentation looks, or what the documentation looks like. I think I didn't add that here, so let me just add that here. So I'll just do like documentation rundown for you. Documentation rundown. What we'll be checking out would just be basically everything you need to know. Documentation now. Okay, everything you need to know from beginning to the end. Of course, there might be part of the documentation we're not looking into, but that's just because they are not necessary for you. So the first thing we want to look at in the documentation is the landing page here. So the landing page here is a good introduction to generally everything you need to know. So for example, there's installation part here, which the main thing you really need is the first installation. And once you are done installing like that, you add the add REST framework to the installed app so that the project will recognize it. Do your routing, and when you come down here, you see where you do your serialization, Viewsets, register your routes, and then the URL pattern. That's all you really need, and you have API running for you. But this introductory part might be a bit difficult for beginners, which is even why I'm making this tutorial. So if you feel that this is difficult, you could also check out the tutorials here, which starts with the quick start guide for you. There's a quick start guide where you'll be able to create a basic project in a very short while. They'll guide you through it if you are willing to read through what's here. But I still believe that for beginners, this might be a bit difficult because it comes with authentication, permissions, and all that, which might be a bit advanced. After this, there is the serialization, which is a compulsory thing. It's like doing JSON.stringify in JavaScript. So this is very, very necessary, which of course without it you just run into an error. This is it here. Then we have the request and response, which is a basic API endpoint that you'll be creating using the function-based view. After this, there's the class-based view, which is an upgrade from the function-based view. And then there is the authentication and permission. There is the relationship and hyperlink APIs. Then there's the view sets and the routes. These are what you really need to know inside of this, inside of this documentation for you to really get started. For this tutorial, we will not be covering authentication and permissions, nor are we going to be covering relationships and hyperlinks API. I believe this is a bit advanced for beginners. So when you've gotten a hang of what the REST API is and how it should work, then I think it is time for you to advance to authentication and permission. So set it out. I'll be making another video for authentication in a minute. Not immediately, but of course that might be my next tutorial. So what we'll be covering here inside of this tutorial would be the quick start, not the quick start, the serialization, the function-based views, and the class-based views, and then we'll be looking at view sets. As we look at these things, we'll be also covering smaller things like mixins, like generics, and of course the routers that we talked about. Here's the API guide for going a bit more details into some of these things we have talked about. So for example, this is the request, the response, the views, the generic views, the view set, the routes. Here's the authentication permission, things we've talked about. Here's throttling, here's filtering, here's pagination, and all of this you will get a hang of gradually. But in this tutorial, we'll be looking at a beginner's guide, how beginners should really get started. These are other topics you might be interested in. Documenting your API, this is very, very, very important, which we'll be doing in a future video. And here's the community for anything you feel like you need, especially tutorial and resources. And this basically what you really need to know about this documentation. It wouldn't be difficult to follow. In fact, during this tutorial, we'll be looking at different parts of these tutorials, especially starting with this serialization, which is like a basic building block. Okay, all right. Now that we have done a quick run through, we've been able to check out this box. So the next thing we want to do is to install the REST framework. And of course, I showed you where you can get this command if you want to install it. So it is over here. So I've already copied it. I'll just come in here and paste it. We're installing it inside of the virtual environment. So hit enter. And it has started. All right, so we can just get rid of this. Here saying, would you like create a virtual environment for these packages? I've already created a virtual environment, so that wouldn't be necessary. Let's get rid of all of this. Okay, so that is out of the way. So let's continue. I guess everything should be working fine now. So now that we've gotten this out of the way, the next thing is to add the REST framework to the installed. So how do we do this? Basically, you just need to take this and add it to the installed apps here. So just add it below here, and that gets you ready to use the REST framework like that. So that's just what you really need. So once we've gotten this out of the way, the next thing is to focus on models. We've also discussed models in a past video, so make sure you check that out just in case you are really new to this. So let's jump right in, go into our student app here, and then go into models. Once we go into models, we want to create that model. So the model will be model of students, like that. You could choose to make it a student model, whatever, and inside of you to do models.model, like that. And then what we need is just two fields. We want a name field and say equal to, it's going to be a character field. So it's going to be models.char field. Just get rid of this first part and just put in the max length to be 50. You could just add email field like that. Just so that it is fun, all right? So of course, models.char field. We wouldn't set a max length for that. And then about the student, so like that. Models, this time around we're using text field, all right? No setting of anything inside of that. And this is basically what you need to create a model. So now that I've created a model, the next thing would be to make migrations. Now you'll have noticed that we had some errors when we created or when we ran this the first time. So we have some errors here, but I guess we'll be clearing them off in a bit. It's telling us that we must specify a max length here. I guess I mistake that. So now we've saved that and we are good. Now it's telling us that we have 18 unapplied migrations. So the reason is because we've not run the migrations, but we'll run everything together now and get rid of this error. So let's go back here and copy our command here, which is Python manage.py make migrations, and we'll paste it inside of here. So let's clear this off, paste this, and of course migrations we want to make is called a student app. That is the student app we've created. Okay, so we hit it and then we have the migrations, and then the last thing would be to run the migrations, which is Python manage.py migrate. That's it. So let's paste this in here, hit enter, and all migrations are run. So when we come back here and restart our server, all the errors are gone. So with this, that means our migrations are ready. Our database too is ready. So the next thing would be for us to set up admin and see how far or how well we have done so far. So in our previous tutorial, we also made mention that one of the beauty of Django is the fact that you have an admin that comes with Django and you can use it to manage everything. All right, so we'll just set it up immediately and see how well we've done so far. So for us to set it up, we need to create a user. So for now, if you try to log in, you would just get an error. So let's go back and try to log in. So here we are back to, this is where we're using now, and this is a former one. So we just close all of this off. And for you to navigate to your admin, you do a /admin like this and hit enter. So you could try to log in and you notice that there will be an error because you've not been able to set your username and your password for that account. Okay, so let's head back and go and create a super user. So a super user will be like the main person that owns it, right? So it's Python manage.py create super user. So we hit enter and all right, we just do admin. We'll skip the email and put in all right, it didn't match, sorry. We'll put in a password for ourselves and we'll just tell him yes, whatsoever we want it that way. All right, so once you have this now, we can go back and try to log in again. So when we try to log in this time around, it takes us in because we have been able to create that super user. So now we have the users and the groups, which comes by default too with Django. This is really cool because you don't have to start manipulating users on your own without something to start with. So it gives you like a head start. Okay, now how about the model we just created? Because we just created a model for students. So how do you manage students from there? Of course, I've done this in the past too, so I have a lot for you in my previous videos, so make sure you check that out. So for us to do this, we need to go back to students here. Not here, it should be here. Okay, admin.py, and then we just want to add this particular model to what we have. So .site.register like that, and so we just add the model. So before we'll be able to add the model, we need to import it. So from model import student like that, and then we'll just take this student, register it inside of here, save it, and then go back, do a refresh, and we'll have students here. So once we check it out, we see that we have 0 students. We can now add students. So for example, we could add Njoko like that, and we say we want email of Njoko. Okay, and about him, cool guy, something like that. We'll save it and add another one. So we'll just add like 3 of it like that. This of course are my names. You should know my name by now. Very plenty like that. Nice guy. So we're just adding this so that we have something to work with. Okay, so like that, and popular guy like that. We just save it. So we have 3 students to work with like that. So you could choose to do anything from here. You could choose to save and continue editing, delete the students. You could choose to update the students and stuff like that from here. But of course, everybody wouldn't have access to the admin, so that's why we're creating the APIs. So since we've created this and now we've been able to check out everything about the admin here, and we've been able to add the model and even view everything we needed to know. So the next point would now be adding the endpoint or building out the endpoints, which are the API endpoints. So for that, we'll now navigate to the last segment of this tutorial. Okay. All right. So we want to get started with the endpoint now. But one thing we missed in our curriculum is that we need a serializer. Yeah. So like I told you before, serializers are like JSON.stringify. Basically, they help your they help you to, well, I say, manage the format of your data that you get or that you input. Basically, that's just what you really need to know. And of course, it's not something difficult. We'll just create it up immediately. So you create a new file inside of the student app and do serializer.py. I think I need to slow down now. So up until now, I've sped up because everything we've done so far are things I've done in my previous tutorial. So, but for now, we are now moving to something that is really new. So the first thing I want to do here is create a class and call it student serializer. All right, and then we want to import from serializer. We are importing from REST Framework serializer. So let me show you how this works up here. So you can check out anything we are doing here. What we are doing is very open. So we've been able to do most of these things, like we've installed the REST framework. And next thing we're supposed to do is to import the serializer from the REST framework like this. So everything we are doing is there, and so you could just do a copy and paste like me. And then inside of here, we want to extend the serializers dot model serializers. Now, it is important to note that there is so many type of serializers, and we're not going to be covering them. In fact, if you type H here, you have hyperlink identifier field, hyperlink model serializer, and all that. But what we want is the model serializer. So make sure this is what you have. And then inside of this, we are creating a subclass called meta, like so. And then inside of this, we are creating two things. One is the model, and the second is the field. So the model, for the model, will also import from .model like this. We're importing student. So the student model is what we're importing, and we're saying that what the model we want to use for this serializer is student. And for the fields that we want, so fields, if I'll spell that correctly, fields, you could choose to specify each field that you want, but since we are using all of them, there's no point. So we just do a double underscore all and double underscore after that. So this should be an equal to, this should also be an equal to. So I get that mixed up sometimes. All right, so let's save that. And with this, you have your student serializer ready. So what this basically does is, now that it has access to all the field in the model, it can now validate our inputs as against whatever model we already have, stuff like that. And you don't need more than this code here. Of course, if you advance, you could check more, but this is basically what you really need. So like I told you, we have many kind of serializers. There's serializers, not serializer, and all that, but we are not interested in all of that. So let's head back here, and then we now move to the views. Inside of the views, this is where we now write our API endpoint. All right. In case you don't know what the views is and how it works, please check out my previous tutorial as usual. So we'll just import a HTTP response because we'll be needing it. And then from the REST framework, we'll also want to import response. Now, if you are wondering where we are at this point, we are here in request and response, and the code we are writing is similar to what we have here. So we'll be needing a bunch of this, so we could just copy the first 3 lines here. We need the status, we need the decorators, and we need the response. So the status will just tell us the status of whatsoever operation we've done. The API view is a decorator, which helps to specify the kind of API call, the kind of verb we're using, and the response, of course, shows what we got back, and that is it basically. But what I love to do is to create a basic view first of all. So it will just be home, just for, I don't know, maybe for fun or stuff like that, and it takes in a request like that, and we'll just return a HTTP response, and we say this. No, let's just say student API, stuff like that. Save it, and then we'll go back to the URL. So first things first, we need to go into the student here, inside of students, not student app, inside of students, and register the student app URL. So what we want to do is just this, what you are seeing here. Paste it down here, and then we'll make adjustments. So make sure you imported the include here. All right, and inside of here, you could choose to do students like this, but I don't see the need, so I'll just keep it empty because that's how I want it to be. And then want to install the student app. So it's students, make sure the spelling is correct, student app like that, the URLs. So that means this app has now been registered among the URLs that can access it. So let's go back now into our student app. Inside of our student app here, okay, we don't have the URLs file, so make sure you create it.py like that, and then we just do a URL patterns like that, and then inside of it we create a path like that. Now for our path, we want to also keep this empty, and by the way, we also need to import the path. So we could just do that from, we could just copy that from here. So copy it and then paste it here like that. We can get rid of the include for now, we might be needing it in the future. Path like this, and then what do we want to register here? We want to register a particular view. So the view we want to register here, let's import it from .view import home like that. All right, once you've imported it, you can now type it in here, home, and of course you can give it a name, home, like that. So now that we have this, we can save it, and hopefully everything should work correctly. I think student app, the URLs, hopefully, not sure, I think I'm getting an error here. Students underscore app, the URLs. So let's go back and check it out. Like this, and we'll have an error here. It's telling us no module students app, the URLs. All right, we should be back online. We just had to restart the server. Yeah, we just had to restart the server, and that was it. So sometimes these things behave funny even when everything is correct. Okay, so okay, now we have the URLs working. That means we are good to go. So the next thing we want to do is to actually create an endpoint. So the first endpoint we'll be creating will be a get endpoint. Now for us to start that, we need to decorate it or specify the verb that we'll be expecting. Now note that by default it will use a get verb. All right, so let's do API view like that. Inside of the array here is where you specify the verbs. All right, now let's come down here and then define the name. So the name would be students like that, and it takes in a request as an argument, and then it comes down here. So what do we want to do? We want to fetch all the students we have inside of the database. All right, so for us to do that, first things first, we need to import the models that we have created. All right, so from .models import students like that. Now that we have this, we can now do a student dot objects dot all like that, and then we can now return a response. Remember that we have imported response at the top here. So what do we want to do? Remember I told you that we need that serializer. Without this serializer, we'll run into an error. So let's make sure we import our serializer too. So from .serializer import student serializer like that. So inside of here, we now pass in the students here. So let's make sure that we put this into a variable. So students like that. So we want to pass this into here. Now we also want to specify that there will be many of this, so equal to true like that, and do dot data. So you need to remember to add the dot data at the end. If not, you also get an error. Then I want to specify the status So what happens when everything goes well? We need a status of 200. So um all right, status. So let's do status dot 200. Yeah, okay. So now that I have this, next thing is also to register this particular view. For every view you do, you have to register it under the URLs here for it to fly. So let's do it path like that. And then we want to do it a slash student. So you recall, let's remove this from here, and this slash needs to be at the back. Sorry. You recall that I told you about how we design REST APIs. So you need to bear that in mind as we do this too. So we do students, and then inside of here we specify student. Then we specify a name too, like this, and say it is also student name. So we are now doing a get. So we are getting all. Recall what we talked about, the API design. Okay. So now that I have students, let's go back here and do a slash student. Hopefully everything works well, and voila, we have everything here. So we didn't specify the get. So let's go back and specify the get. So let's go back and let's do a get here. Let's put it like this, and then hopefully this should work now. So we do a refresh and we have everything. So you see, so by default it is always get. All right, now, but like we also pointed out in our image here, you could either do a get or do a post. So how do you identify when to do a get or do a post? So what you now need to do for you to make sure you identify everything is to create an if statement. All right, so let's come here and do a refactor and do if our request dot method equivalent to get, which we have specified here. Let's run the following code. All right, like that. So now that we have this, everything should still work exactly the same. So we can do a refresh, and these are the three items we have inside of our database. All right, but we can't add anyone now, and the reason is because we've not written the code. So let's go back here. Back here, we now want to specify if it is a post. Recall that we said a post is used to create a particular data. So we want to be able to create students. So we do an if request dot method equivalent to post, like that. We want to now do a serialize. So student serializer. Inside of this, we want to specify a data equal to requests dot data, like that. So I want to make sure that we put this into a variable as usual, and then we want to now check if everything is okay. We'll save it. So if student dot is valid, like this, we want to save that student. So student dot save. That's just it. And so what do we do after this? We now return a response. Return response, like that. And we want to do students dot data as usual, and then specify the status. So if something is created, it wouldn't be a 200, it would be a 201. So status dot, we use 201 created. All right, so now that we have this, we save it. Okay, we also need to add this post to the get here. So let's make sure we have that here. If you don't have that, another error. So save that and go back here. Recall that we don't have a post at this time, but if we do a refresh now and go down, we now have content here. So inside of the content here, we can now specify a new user. So let's do that. So let's just copy what we have here, paste it here, get rid of the ID because this one is created automatically, and then you could now add a name. So we've not added Samson here, so let's add Samson and also do Samson here. Samson, okay. Hey, what do I use? Decent guy. Okay, so now that I have this, I'll just do a post, and as soon as I do a post, it adds it, and it shows me what it adds. This is the students dot data that I did here. So this is student dot data that is here. It shows us what we've just added, and of course it tells us that it has been created HTTP 200. This is how it works, and it is this simple. And when you try to get again, you notice that we now have 4 entries. It is that simple. All right, so we've been able to do 2 out of the 5 verbs that we talked about here. So, and what we've been able to do is this one on students. So how about if we want to interact with a particular student that we've created? So we want to maybe retrieve that student, we want to put in the student's data to update it, or want to delete that student. So how do we do it? So let's get back to our code. So here inside of our code, we want to create a new function. So this function, we could just say student detail, because we'll now be working with a particular student detail, all right? So request. We are always taking in a request, all right? And the second thing will be PK. PK is primary key or an identifier, stuff like that, okay? So as usual, we want to also make sure that we add our decorator. Without our decorator, what we're doing would not make sense because we'll get an error. So the second thing here would be put, and the third would be delete, like that. All right, so now that we have this, we'll now start by getting a particular student. All right, so we want to get a particular student detail. So the first thing we want to do is to just get the student detail equivalent to students dot objects dot get. So what are we getting? A particular student. So it's going to be pk equal to pk, like that. All right, so this is the first general thing we want to do, because we'll be needing this particular student for every of these operations we need to do. So the first one is if our request is get. So if our request is get, this time around, what do we want to do? We just want to return that particular student. So we just do return response, and inside of the response, we do a student serialize, then passing that student detail, and then we do a dot data. And then what's the response going to be like? Sorry, the status, not the response. Status is going to be status dot, it's just going to be okay, HTTP 200. Okay, so we can test that out. I want to build this gradually so that it's not confusing. So let's go back here. Okay, we need to register our URLs first, sorry. So inside of here, we'll just copy this and paste this. And then remember, it still takes the same kind of URL, but this time around we're adding a particular number. So we just make the number really dynamic here. So we'll just put in an int and then colon, then we're adding a pk, primary key. Then here we're specifying student detail. So you could just copy this, paste this here, and paste this here. So with this, we should be good, hopefully. All right, so we're back here, and we want to get a particular student. So here we had 4 of them, but now we want to just get the second person. All right, let's try out something else. Say 4. Okay, I'm not sure why number 2 isn't working, but it seems other numbers are working. So we'll just focus on what's working. I think I'll be able to fix that sometimes later. So we can now get a particular student. So let's head back here. Everything is looking nice. So let's come back here. And you might wonder why you have the delete and the put here. Both of them would not work anything because we have not created a functionality. Okay, so let's just go back and work on those things. Okay, the reason why we have them showing, I think I have multiple projects open, so let me close off this one. All right, so the reason why those other 2 are showing is because we've specified them at the top here. So let's add the functionality now. So let's open and say if we are doing a put. So if the request is a put, so put like that, what do we do? So we want to update whatever has been given. Okay, so for us to do that, the first thing we need to do is student like this, and we say this student is equal to the student serializer. So we're passing two things this time around. First things we are passing is the data we have received, and the second is the data that is being passed. All right, so it's going to be data equal to requests dot data like that. And next thing would now be to check if all is going well, if student dot is valid like that. If that is cool, then we just want to save our students like this dot save. That is it, nothing more. All right, so once we have this, we also want to update like we did for the post here. So I'll just copy this one for the post. All right, and make sure you put your colon here, and instead of this HTTP, I'll just do accepted. So 202 accepted. Now that we've done this, let's go back and do a refresh. Then we'll try to update what we have. Okay, so let me copy this, copy it, paste it here. You can get rid of this, don't need the ID. So you could just change this to 55555 and do a put. So as soon as you do a put, notice that it does a refresh and retrieves for you what you have updated. Okay, and we could do this for other ones. So we say 2, it's not working for no reason, so but 3 works. All right, so let's try this for plenty too, and then we'll copy this, paste it in, get rid of the ID. It already knows what to do, and we change this to other, just add random numbers, do a put, and it's working. So now that this is working, let's return to our code here and then do the last one, which is for delete. So if request dot method equivalent to delete, what we want to do is the simplest, of course the most dangerous, because I mean you are deleting, so it's dot delete, that's all. So we just take the student that we've returned here and do a dot delete on it. So once we do that, we can now return a response like that, and we'll just give a status saying status dot no content 204. So now that we've done that, save it and go back, do a refresh here, then we delete. It asks us if we want to delete, and boom, we have deleted that. It's gone, no content. So if you try to get this again, you just hit an error like that. Okay, so let's get back and let's do this for 1. So have 1. You could also do a delete like this, and if you try to get it again, of course you run into an error. But let's come back here. So we've been able to create all the endpoints that we need. This is a function-based view. We just needed 2 URLs or 2 endpoints, which are what we have here, and this is exactly what we discussed here in the REST API design. So when we come here, we can check off the serializer and check off the function-based view. So that actually concludes it for function-based views. Of course, I'll make sure I upload this. But the next thing we'll be now looking at is class-based view, and we'll be seeing how class-based view improves what we already have in the function-based view. I promise you really love what class-based view brings for us. So I'll see you in a bit. Yo, welcome back. We're now looking at class-based view. This is a huge improvement on the function-based view, and in fact, I'm promising you that you will love it. What we'll be doing here is to improve our code, basically, or refactor it, as the case may be. So let's go back. I feel like we've already done the hard work. So what we'll be doing now would be here in the class-based views tutorial. You could check it out. I'll show you how everything comes together. So the main thing is that we are converting everything we've done into a class. So here they have their own to be snippet list, snippet detail. We just do our own thing, you know. So what it means is we'll no longer be needing this API decorator here, so we'll get rid of it. Okay. Um, we'll now change this to class like that, and we are calling it student. That's just it, students, like that. But what we'll now need is the API view, which is this. So we import it from views. So let's copy it and paste it here. All right, because we'll be extending it here, API view. And then we'll now be writing individual functions inside of the class. So here's what's going on here. For example, there's a function to get, there's a function to post. So instead of doing the normal if requires dot method, you know, stuff like that, we'll just be converting everything to this. So I could just copy this line like so. It takes in 3 parameters, which is self, format, and the last one, which is request. Okay, so this is for get. So we could do the same thing for the post like so. So we'll just change this to posts like that. Okay, let's make sure this colon is here. And once you have this, every other thing should be the same. So like they have here, every other thing is the same. So we'll come back here and we'll just do the same thing for this other part. So let's also say class like that, and we are saying student detail. It takes in API v2. Make sure I put the colon here, and inside of here we want to define a function. So let's define a function and say student detail. So student detail like that. It takes in 2 parameters. So the first one is self, and the second one is the pk. So inside of here we'll just return this student like that. We're not returning this. This is just it basically. So we'll now come down here and do exactly what we have done here too. So we'll copy this line, paste it here. So instead of get, we'll just do a get method. So automatically it recognizes what we want to do. Now instead of this student detail here, we'll now call it as a function. So we'll do a self dot student detail like that. So this is exactly what they have done here. So I'll just show you. So here is it. So here is a function get object, and so when you come down here you do a self dot get object. So you just make sure you pass in the primary key. All right, so inside of here we want to add in the pk. So you notice that here too they have the pk. So the difference between this and this is that there's a pk here, which is the primary key. Okay, so let's make sure we add our own pk here. So pk, like I told you, basically everything is the same. All that changes is just these few things that makes the difference. Okay, we're just calling this function that is here and we're passing the pk. Okay, so besides that, all other things are the same. So we'll just copy this too and put it for here and convert this to puts like so. Then same thing that we've done here. Anywhere we see the student detail, we just change it and call the function that we have created. Of course, if this is a bit confusing, then that means you need to go and maybe refreshing or learn how classes work. All right, so we're doing this again for delete. Paste it like this and delete. Everything we are doing is basically the same thing. So let's call the function as we did before. So once you call the function and do the dot delete, everything should work the same. So if you try it now, it wouldn't work exactly the same. So let's save this and try it, and let me do a refresh. So you see we should get an error. You'll notice that once you call, it goes off for a while. It's not working exactly as it should be. Okay, let's check our terminal and see what's going on in the terminal there. All right, so you see it's telling us that cannot import students from students app.views. The reason is because the way we are to handle the URLs is now different from what we had before. All right, so at this point we are now importing students, and we're importing student details. Notice that these ones now are capitalized. Okay, now we'll come back here, and instead of students here, we'll do student dot as view like this, and same thing for the student details. We'll copy paste like this and do a dot as view like so. So once we do this, we make sure everything is properly formatted, save it, and notice that the error is gone. So this time around, when we go back and we do a refresh, it doesn't go off for a while like it was. I hope you understand what I'm saying here. So let's go back and do a refresher and check out what we have done. All right, so remember that what we just did was just to like refactor or do a bit of an upgrade on what we already have and make our code more cleaner, more containerized, stuff like that. This may not look so different from the function-based view, but it gives us an edge, which I'll be showing you in a bit. But I just want to make sure that everything is working exactly as it should be. So let's add someone here. So let's add Njoko. All right, and let's make sure we get rid of the ID and ng like that, and do a post. So this works exactly as we would want it to be. Now let's try to get this particular student 5. Hit enter, and we have it here. We could do an update to this. So let's copy paste this inside of here, get rid of this, and then let's just add a few numbers here just to make sure that it's different. Make a put, and you see it has updated, and when we try to delete, it goes off, which shows everything is working perfectly as it should be. This is cute, this is beautiful. But like I told you, the class-based view is not so different if we stop at this point. So what really makes it different is Mixins. I'll show you this in a bit. So we'll just scroll down here, and you see what we call Mixins. Now with Mixins, we are able to make our code very short than what you already have here, and you'll be surprised. I'll be showing you this in a minute. We're able to make our code shorter. Here it tells us that the operations, that's the create, retrieve, update, delete operation that we have been using, are very similar to each other. So if they are very similar to each other, how then do we just get rid of the extra code that we have been using? Okay, so that's where Mixins come in. So for this to work, we just need to do a little more of refactor. All right, so first things first, we need to import Mixins and generics from the REST framework. So let's come back here, go to the top here, and from REST framework, let's go up here. We already have REST framework here, so let's import Mixins and import generics. So instead of API view this time around, we'll be importing the Mixins. So doing Mixins the list mode list mode mixin, create mode mixin, then we'll now do the generic API view instead of the regular API view. All right, so I could just copy what we have here instead of typing it out. So I'll just copy everything inside of here like this and paste it inside of here. So recall that everything we are doing at this point, we are doing it from this tutorial class-based view. All right, then the next thing we want to take care of is two things: the query sets and then the serializers here. So the query set is basically getting everything in the database, and here the serializer is just, of course, the serializer. Basically, that's just it. So what we could do is also to copy these two lines like that. So once we copy it, we paste it in here. Now, just in case you didn't notice, we have two things that is being imported here: the list mode mixin and the create mode mixin, which is a redefinition of these two functions. So for this function, recall that it gets everything inside of the database, and for this function, it adds to the database. So this is the list mode and this is the create mode. So inside of here, we'll paste in these two lines of code and then update it. So this snippet here is supposed to be our model. So we do student, which we got from our model here. All right, and here is our serializer. That is just it. So keep this at query sets and keep this at serializer class. This is how you make sure that everything is uniform. Then when we come back here, we just copy these two. These two are basically the same thing. The only difference is the verbs here. All right. So it still takes the self request, but this time around it takes args and quags. So this for arguments and keywords arguments. So these are basic Python. So let's come in here. Now instead of these two functions, let's paste this as a replacement. Make sure this is properly aligned. So what's going on here? We are redefining everything we have done before. So instead of having the long get function where we specify everything, we just pass in this small function and everything is working as it should be. Now let's also refactor the second one here. We're refactoring the second one here. So for us to refactor the second one, we're also doing the same thing, all right? And I'll paste it in so that you see what we're saying. So you override this. The retrieve mode mixin, update mode mixin, and the destroy mode mixin. So for the retrieve mode, it retrieves one item from the database. For the update mode, it updates a particular item, and the destroy mode destroy that particular item. It is that simple. Now for this, we'll also need to do the same thing that we've done here, which is to get all like this. All right. So let's place this at the top here. Make sure it is properly aligned. So that's just it. So you see it's snippet.object.all, which is the same thing they did at the top here. We just need to have access to the data in the database and then the serializer class, basically. Then you can just copy this. This is the same for any mixin that you want to do. So I'll just overwrite everything that I have here. So I just overwrite this, paste it. So once you paste it, make sure this is properly aligned. And once you have this is all. So like I told you, by default, the class based view may not differ so much from what you have in the function. So you might be wondering, why should I use the class based view? But the class based view gives you an edge. It gives you the possibility of cleaning up your code and using a more organized code like what the Mixins give us here. All right. So once we've done this, the next thing that we want to do is to, of course, go through our test again. But here's what Mixin do, and of course, I'll still be showing you an extra thing that you can do using the class-based function. Sorry, class-based view. So give me a minute to be coming back to generic views. So now that we have this, fingers crossed, everything should still work exactly as it is from the beginning. So we refresh and it still works. But notice this time around that it is not just the way the raw data was before. Initially, it was just this raw data. In fact, the raw data this time around comes with like a placeholder, which is beautiful. But this time around, we now have a HTML form given to us. So let's try to work with this and, about a very genius guy. Post it and it updates exactly as we want, or create it exactly as we want. Okay, so this is number 6. So let's retrieve number 6. So notice that everything is there. In fact, it autofills everything for you. As you can see, this is really cool. And if you want to update this, you could let's just put in some gibberish here and get rid of all of this. Add in some gibberish. That's just it. And then put. So once you put, you notice that it updates immediately. How do you know that this is different? Check out the form. The form is different from what you already have before, and exactly what you have done before, you can delete this. So we are deleting this and it's gone. So if you try to do a refresh, it now tells you that no student matches the given query, different from what we had before. Initially, before now, if you tried to get a particular student that wasn't in the database, you get a huge error. But this time around, we'll have a better decorated error. But how simple can this get? I'll introduce you to generic views. So before we move, just here, what we'll be doing now is to make this as a one-liner as possible. So notice that for the mixins here, we had to import up to 4 things, import up to 3 things. But here, you can now import only one using what we call generic class views. And this is the game changer that we're talking about. So let's go back to our code here. Of course, we already have generics imported here for us. So let's come back here and just take the generic.list creates API view. And I'll show you the difference immediately. So let me overwrite what we have here in the students. So now, instead of having to import three things, they are all combined here: lists and create API view. So there's no need importing up to three of them. And how about inside of here, you can now get rid of the other two functions. This is what generics do for you, you know. So let's get rid of these two. It only gets easier and simpler. Now for this one, we have three. Remember, we are doing three functions here. One is the retrieve, the update, and destroy. So we have generics.retrieve, update, destroy, API view. Just the same thing. So let's replace what we have here already. Make it a one-liner. And of course, get rid of all these functions. So once you get rid of all these functions, you are cool. Now, will this work? Let's test it out. All right, so we are back here to test it. Do a refresh. We're still getting the same thing. Come back to students. You're getting the same thing. Let's fill this in. Fill something in. All right, so let's come here and type in something. Joko Pens, Joko, like that, and do great guy. And make a post. So it creates it immediately, right? Let's retrieve what we have just created. So put in a 7, hit enter. Woof. It comes back. Next thing, we can update this. Let's just add a few numbers, stuff like that. Make a put, it updates, do a delete, and it works exactly as it should be. So now if you try to retrieve this again, it tells you no student matches the given query, and that is it. This is all you really need to know about class-based view. So with this, we can check this off and say we have done class-based view. Awesome. So that is really all you need to know about class-based view. And in the next part, we'll now be looking at view sets. So how does class-based view differ from view sets? I'll see you in the next one. So it's been exciting so far seeing how easy it can get to create API endpoints using the Django REST framework, and it is beautiful. But how simpler or how easier can it get? This is where Viewsets comes to play. Now Viewsets makes everything even more streamlined compared to what the class-based view gives to us. So let's get back here. Now notice that here, so far with our class-based function, and we're using Mixins generics, specifically generics in this case, we have two classes, and these two classes has many things in common. For example, there's a query set and the serializer class that we have for both classes. The main difference here is just the name of the class, and then the classes that are being extended or the functions being extended. But Viewset even makes you do this thing in one function, making it very easy for you to just map the get function to what it is supposed to be. So what we'll now do is to refactor our code or make our code more streamlined by using the view set. So down here we have the view set and the routes, and we'll be doing all of them in a bit. So what do you need to do in this case? I've navigated to the last tutorial here, and here in the last tutorial it's all about the view set and then the routing, so that I see how it is done. So what we'll be doing is exactly what we have here. So first things first, we'll be importing view sets. View set is being imported from the REST framework. So that's the first thing we need to do. So let's come here and add the view set. We'll be changing everything in a bit. And then we want just one function, so we'll get rid of the second function here. So we'll stick to the first one. And then we now want to extend just the way it is here, extend the module view set. Now recall that most of the things we've been doing, we do it with the model, because we are mapping directly what we have in the model to what we are doing in our code. All right. So if you are paying attention to this, you may not need to worry about most of the things here. I'm just giving you the basic stuff. For authorization and permission, we'll be doing that in a separate tutorial. All right. So the next thing we need to do is to just specify the query set and the serializer, which we have already done in a previous tutorial. So all we need to do here really is to do viewsets.model viewset. That is it. And once you do this, your viewset is ready. However, this will not work until we make some changes to our URL. So if you do a refresh here, you see it goes blank for a while before it comes back. It shows this is not working, and you could also check your terminal to see what I'm talking about. and you see that we are now getting an error telling us cannot import student details from. Of course, this is because we don't have it here. So let's go back here and fix all these issues. So let's get rid of this. So that also means that this wouldn't be working here. All right, so we can change this to student. All right, now what we need to do inside of here now is to map. We just want to map the function that we expect to happen in this URL. So every function is found inside of this class because it is encompassed. So what we just do now is map the functions we are looking out for. So when we come here and go to this mapping here, inside of here we map the get to list and the post to create. So we can just copy these two of them like this and paste it inside of here. All right. Yeah, that's correct. Or just make sure that this is inside of a curly brace so that you don't make that mistake. All right, then we'll do the same thing for the second one. So just copy this like so and come here inside of students here. Notice that we're using just one function now and set up all this map. So what we're saying here is that for this path of the REST API, the get should do a list, that is list out everything inside the database. The post should create a new student. The get should retrieve a particular student. The put should update a particular student. The patch should partially update a particular student, which we don't really need. And then the delete should destroy or remove a particular student. So now that we have been able to set this up, everything should be fine and good. If we save it, fingers crossed, come back here and come back here and do a refresh. So something broke. Okay, I forgot to add the as view here, so we're getting that error. So this should fix the issue. And so when we come back here and do a refresh, we have everything working as we have left it initially. So we can add something new here. Let's just add something random, like so, honest guy, like that, and hit the post and he adds it like so. That's number 8. So let's retrieve it, number 8. We couldn't get that, so what could be the issue? 404. Well, I'm not sure why that didn't come back. However, we're able to retrieve everything here. So we could just test out what we are doing with number 4. So let's update it like so. Hit update like that, and then we can also delete like so. So delete like that. And when you try to retrieve this again, it tells us no student matches the given query like that. If you try one, no student matches. I'm not sure why it is giving us an error. It's ID number 8. So yes, I'll check that out later, but you get a point. So we've been able to do the view set and see how it works. Now the final thing I want to introduce you to is routes. So instead of having to do all this plenty setup here, so having to do all of this, we want to be able to avoid many of these ups and downs. So I'll just copy this out, and then I'll just open up with URLs. Okay, I'll mix that. All right, so what I want to do now is to just do routing. So with routing, you don't have to specify all of this. You just need a one-liner. That is just it. So let's come back here, inside of here, say using routes. And all you need to do is import the default routes like that. So I've copied that and pasting it here. So from REST Framework routers, we're importing default routers like that. And then we'll just initialize it like we have done here. Do you see? So once we initialize it, we are now ready to use it. Okay. Then we'll just specify or register what we are doing. So what are we using for our own? So let's paste this here. So what we are registering here would be student. So let's specify students. And then inside of the views, we are collecting students like that. And here we are calling it student like so. Now the final thing after registering here would just be to add our path like this. So we just include the route.url. So I'll just get rid of this whole path. So the two of them, we're getting rid of them. So you see, it only gets simpler. So let's just add this and make sure we import the include beside the path. Told you before, we'll be getting the include back again. So now that we have this, we can save it, and everything should work exactly the same again. So let's retrieve everything again, and let's try again. Okay, cool, like that. Post, and it works. So let's try and see if this would be retrieved again. Okay, good, this time around. I'm not sure why sometimes it doesn't retrieve, but I hope the point is clear in what we are trying to do here. Just trying to get my face off your face. All right, so here I could just add numbers just to make sure we're able to update something. Now it's updated, and then we could do our delete. So we just delete, and it works. So if you try to retrieve this again, it tells us that no student matches the given query. So this is how Viewsets works. Now you might now be wondering, is there any time you would need to do maybe use the function based views, or should you just stick to Viewsets since it makes everything simpler? You see, at the end of it, the choice will be yours. But here's the difference: the easier it got, we are unable to see any of our code. So it makes it very difficult for you to be able to manage your code when you are using advanced methods like the class-based views and the view set. However, if you want to have full control of everything going on, you can stick to the function-based view. But if you do not have any specific reason, anything you want to manipulate different from what's already going on, you can go for the class-based view and the view set. This is clearly specified here in the trade-off. So using the view set, it gives you a lot of abstraction, so you don't even have to deal with routing. Routing is done almost everything for you, and it's just simple. But for the function-based view, you still have to specify everything by yourself, but it also makes you have full control of what you want to do. So just check it out and see what really works for you, how it should be for you. I might be making another video to show how this function-based view, class-based view, and view set differ, and which you should use. But for now, this is the size of this tutorial, and I hope I've been able to introduce you so everything you need to know about how to create REST APIs using the REST framework, and how you can also navigate all through this documentation. If you have any question, you can drop it in the comments. I'll be sure to reply. Thank you very much for watching. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share this to other people who might need it. So for now, we've been able to conclude, and in fact, we have done everything we need to know about REST API. I'll see you in my next tutorial.